We hit an all-time stock market high.
Yep.
401ks are the highest they've ever been by double and triple. We have more people working in the United States today than ever in history. We're doing an unbelievable job. Costs are coming way down. I inherited, they talk about costs. I inherited very, very high costs, and they're all coming down now. The food, the groceries, it's all coming down. We've done a great job.
The president gets affordability for sure. And I do think he tries to message to that point when he is, either doing an interview or in front of the crowds, Larry. But still there's this feeling of the big, beautiful bill was last year. What have you done for me lately? I want to know what's coming next. And they don't necessarily see the GOP have anything big for them coming down the pike. And people are frustrated by that. While food costs are coming down, they're coming down slowly. And he did inherit a big, fat mess. I don't envy him for that. But still, something is missing in the messaging of how the GOP is communicating with voters.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, first of all, the economy is booming. That's point number one. And it's booming across the board. And it's especially fun to watch it booming in manufacturing and construction. I know it's all about the new technologies and the power plants and the data centers. I get that, AI. But it's also, as you said yesterday on our show, I mean, you've got industrial companies that are adapting to it. In fact, industrials themselves are doing very well, as are banks, financials. So it's across the board. Consumers are spending rapidly. Confidence surveys dominated by Democrats who hate Trump. So you see these terrible numbers come down. It's irrelevant. Consumers are growing at 3% a year. It's terrific stuff. Businesses, CapEx, capital goods investments, 10, 15% or more. Remarkable. Profits setting records. What did I see? Profit numbers from my pal, Ed Yardeni. 30% S&P forward earnings consensus year ahead, 30%. Now, I know it's a forecast, but still it's a very big number. And the stock market, after being flat, has come back. So President Trump is right about so much of this story. But you're right, it's not resonating. Okay?
Why?
And that's a big problem. Well, I'm not sure I know why. I think a lot of it is poor messaging. He can't do it alone. And I think the Congress is very confused, blundering, really not doing their job. The Republican majorities are sort of hung up on a lot of inside baseball, and they're not getting a message out.
It's always been that way.
They are, not always, but the leadership, it's particularly in the Senate, where there's, it's a circular firing squad in the Senate. It's very bizarre. And you don't have a strong leader there. So there's no messaging. And I think they're blundering. I mean, I really think they're blundering very badly. I was looking, my pal, if I can pull this out, John McLaughlin, who was a very good pollster. And the reason I like him is he polls likely voters, okay? Likely voters, not adults, which is a ridiculous thing, and not even registered voters, likely voters. And he shows that people are just not happy. Hold on, I'm going to find this. Okay. Economy worse or better? This is McLaughlin, Republican pollster. 56% worse.
Yeah.
37% better. Now, the Trump tax cuts from last year, the one big beautiful bill, which are having a really positive effect, but nonetheless, Trump tax cuts enough to improve the economy. Only 26% say yes.
Is that because messaging's missing the mark, though? Because I keep getting confused. I want to hear your thoughts on this with affordability. Affordability is not specific. I think the message is too complicated, and it needs to be reduced to paychecks. Is your paycheck getting bigger under President Trump and the Republicans? Yes. Is your paycheck going to get smaller under Democratic Socialists? Yes. Simple math, easy message. Are we just missing the mark? Because I look at Democratic Socialists, they have these radical ideas, and they have style, but they have style and social media. Is that enough to convince smart voters?
That is the difference, because you look at somebody like a Mamdani or an AOC or even a Bernie Sanders, and even when they are lying to you straight in the face, they will look you in the eye, and they've got this smile and this way of doing it and seizing onto the affordability and life's not fair.
Yeah, with their hand on your
It's
wallet
not
at the same
fair
time.
to
Yeah, but-
you. They're getting through.
It's more than style, though. We pay more in taxes. This is out today. Very important. We pay more in taxes than we do for food, clothing, and shelter.
Yeah.
By an old Reagan friend of mine, Bruce Thompson, who was in the Treasury Department in the White House, was picked up by the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. And the numbers, I don't know if I have the numbers, but it's roughly $8,500 versus $7,500. We pay more in taxes. People want to see more take-home pay. Now, your point is a very good point. The wage numbers are improving, but it's not the easiest sell. It's fairly recent, but I agree. That's part of the messaging problem. Look, they're bungling the whole budget stuff here. Look, you know, we're supposed to be draining the swamp and giving more people, allowing more people to keep more of what they earn, okay? So on the one hand, we should be using all the waste, fraud, abuse, and corruption and institutionalize it and get it in a reconciliation bill so you can cut $500, $700 billion over the next 10 years. And at the same time, it should be accompanied by additional tax reform, not least of which would be indexing capital gains and and increasing the allowance, the exemption for cap gains on the sale of a home. But in general, you could do more. You probably could do more. Lower the tax rate for middle-income people. Maybe you have to go back to tips and overtime and do more. Seniors, it's just, you know, it's like we said yesterday. Ordinary people don't sit around looking at the durable goods backlogs.
They don't.
Or your retail sales.
It happens to be
CPI,
it happens to be fabulous, but I don't think it really registers. And I'm not sure they look at forward earnings either, although I think the stock market is ultimately a very big plus for Mr. Trump. But it is a combination of messaging. The legislation is lousy. They're bungling what they shouldn't bungle. They should be much bolder.
So I have another question for you. Pardon me for following up here, but we talk about this idea of then why aren't the Republicans doing more, putting more in these bills, trying to push harder, sticking together while they have the majority to get things done, and somehow they're not able to do it. And also this idea that Republicans, they're not innocent in this because to a certain degree, they realize affordability is the issue. They realize the platforms that these DS8 candidates are running on. And they say things. For example, the president saying the other day, it's not right that the oil companies are making so much money and they should give some money back to the people. You can't say that.
Well, you can.
You can, but
I've seen this movie before many times. Of course, there's what Mike Summers said last night from the Petroleum Institute. If you went back in COVID, prices were so low you couldn't. People didn't even want to store the stuff because it was so cheap. No, he says that. Like you, I wish he wouldn't say that. He sounds like Elizabeth Warren, but he doesn't really mean it.
right.
He doesn't,
I
he
know,
just kinda
but
says
we're
it.
talking about messaging.
And they're going to reinvest in drilling and production and pipelining and refining. I mean, I'm not worried about that.
Well,
but let me come back to this. Taxes, look, this is affordability. Taxes are a lot about how much money do you keep of what you earn, okay? And this is from this study. $8,192 billion in taxes, $7,388 billion and food, clothing, and housing. I mean, really.
And that's a crazy statistic
Taxes,
right there.
I mean, it's a very clever way to look at the thing. But it goes to, and people want more. They want to keep more of what they earn. That is a classic Ronald Reagan Republican and Donald Trump Republican issue. I've been saying it for about 5 decades now, okay? And we've done it. Now, you did a lot of it in the 2017 bill. You did a lot of it in last year's One Big Beautiful Bill. But you got to do more. And you got to keep pounding the message. You got to do more.
Yeah.
I know they're fighting a war. It takes up time. It takes up resources. He needs more help. Really, I don't forget who said this, which pundit said this, but Karl Rove, how's that? Karl Rove said this on our show this past week or something. Anyway, the individuals running the Senate races, and they have to improve their messaging.
Yeah.
They have to
I hear
do
you.
it.
He can't.
Trump
Trump can't be the only one.
Right. That's the point.
Taylor, I want to bring you in on the markets because the markets are ripping, but we often say, even though more people are invested in the market than ever, that the markets are not the economy. Even though the economy's strong, that doesn't, devalue the way people feel.
Yes, except that maybe because Larry Kudlow's sitting here, the market is not the economy. The market is not the economy that if the market's at record high and I don't have a job, I still feel like crap. Except that, to Larry's always good point, when companies make money, profit, which is what drives the market higher, they get to decide, how do I want to spend that money? Sure, I could give you a dividend or buy back some stock, but I could also reinvest in my business or give you a promotion or give you a raise or hire more people. So the market is not the economy, except that higher profits and higher markets do impact the economy because then those companies feel comfortable hiring and spending and investing, and that drives the economy.
But the criticism...
The biggest winners are wage earners. The biggest winners are wage earners. And that's another point. I think Lou said it. They should emphasize that. I mean, now, I heard Trump last night on the interview, and he said that stuff. I mean, I thought he did very well. It's just that there's not enough, repetition. Politics is like religion. You need repetition, and then you'll come to believe it, and you'll have faith.
Jackie, do you want me to give you a good statistic on that for repetition?
Sure.
Bank of America tracks customer deposits. Customer deposit account data suggests labor momentum strengthened further in July. Payroll growth accelerated 2% year over year, up from 1.7% in June. Lower income households saw after-tax wage growth accelerate 5.2% in July, surpassing all other higher income households. So it's there. The data is there.
But we're back to a messaging problem because...
But they could make the case.
The big corporations, also people demonize them and say, well, they're sitting on their cash. They're not reinvesting it. They're not hiring. It's not filtering through to the bottom line.
We're going to talk about this Marxism stuff in a moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to save it for that. But I'm just saying this is winnable. Don't get me. I don't want to come out as a pessimist. I'm critiquing it. And, the polls are the polls. You asked about it. And McLaughlin's likely voters are very important. Fabrizio uses likely voters. I think Mark Penn often uses likely voters, and they're the best pollsters in the country. All these other polls are nonsense. But this is, all right, we're in early August and so forth. They have a midterm convention in early September in Dallas, a couple days. They have time to make the case. And the Democrats, I think, are giving them gifts. This whole Marxist Islamist nexus that's developing in the Democratic Party is not going to sell well in this country. So there's that. And so I'm still an optimist.
That is a lot, I would say.
But to your point, I mean, it isn't fabulous. I acknowledge that.
Okay, Lydia, final thoughts?
I see so much of what we're talking about in the message that needs to be communicated. And I'm just thinking about the recent trip that I took down to South Carolina to cover the expansion of aluminum smelting. And it's a big product of President Trump's agenda that they're able to expand and invest. Talk about bringing back jobs and manufacturing. Those are some really good paying jobs. And you should have seen the local community celebrating what it means for them. Those are workers that are going to feel the benefits. I mean, these are six-figure jobs.
Sorry. No, please. I didn't mean... shut up, Larry.
No, we want to hear from you.
I was only going to say, to your point, which is a terrific point, which Trump was making last night, these are trades jobs.
Right.
These are not PhDs in sociology or, heaven forbid, economics. These are welders and electricians and carpenters and so forth who work their tails off. These are people that put pipes together and make the water cycle run. And the net effect is the communities see a tremendous economic improvement, which filters right through jobs and wages and families and the whole 9 yards. And ultimately, in many of these states, they're using the extra revenues to cut local property taxes and things like that. Ms. Trump made that point last night. That's a terrific point, okay? You just have to keep doing it. I mean, my point is it's there for the GOP. Look,
Right. Beat the drum.
I'd rather run in any election with record stock markets, with record jobs, with more people working, with virtually no employment except frictional employment, okay? And I'd rather run when I had a lot to say about cutting back democratic big government socialism, fraud, and corruption. I'd rather run on all that. They just got to run on it.
Okay. We've got to run.